The gym was alive with the sound of punching bags, sneakers squeaking on the mats, and the rhythmic shouts of instructors correcting their students. It was a typical Saturday afternoon, when the place was busiest. People from all over the city came to this gym, not just to train but to watch others practice. The gym had a reputation for tough training, skilled fighters, and sometimes a little bit of showmanship. Among the regulars was Marcus, a tall and confident black belt. He was one of those people who always drew attention the moment he walked into the room. His broad shoulders, steady walk, and loud laugh made sure that no one ignored him. Marcus enjoyed being the center of attention. He was skilled, no doubt about it, but he also loved the performance side of fighting, the jokes, the challenges, the way he could get a crowd excited. Many admired him, and a few found him arrogant, but no one could deny his talent. That day, Marcus was in a playful mood. He had just finished a sparring session with another advanced student and was sitting on the edge of the mat, joking with some friends. The gym was buzzing with people stretching, practicing drills, and waiting their turn to spar. In the middle of all this, Danielle walked in quietly. She was new, not well known at the gym yet. She wasn't wearing anything flashy, just simple workout clothes, her hair tied back neatly. She didn't talk much and usually kept to herself, watching others train or following the instructor's directions carefully. To most, she looked like a beginner, someone just trying out martial arts for fitness. She carried herself with a calmness that didn't invite attention. But Marcus noticed her that day. Maybe it was because the crowd around him was looking for entertainment, or maybe he just wanted to prove his charm by making everyone laugh. He looked at Danielle and with a smirk called out, "Hey, want to spar with me?" His tone was playful, almost teasing, as if he didn't expect her to agree. The people nearby chuckled. A black belt against a newcomer? It sounded like a joke, and that was exactly how Marcus meant it. He wasn't trying to be cruel, but he wasn't taking her seriously either. The idea of him sparring with her felt like a funny, harmless challenge. Everyone thought she would wave him off or laugh nervously. Danielle, however, didn't laugh. She paused for a second, looking at him with calm, steady eyes. Her expression didn't change, but something in her silence made the chuckles around the gym fade slightly. She adjusted the strap of her glove bag, then slowly nodded. "All right," she said simply. There was no hesitation in her voice, no nervousness. Just a quiet agreement. For a moment, Marcus was caught off guard. He hadn't expected her to say yes. He raised his eyebrows and laughed, trying to keep the mood light. "Okay then," the instructor gave the signal, and the spar began. Marcus stepped forward lightly, throwing a few easy jabs to test Danielle's reaction. He didn't put real power behind them, just quick playful strikes meant to make her move around. The crowd expected her to stumble back or cover up in panic, but to everyone's surprise, Danielle lifted her gloves smoothly and blocked each jab with calm precision. She didn't flinch, didn't look nervous. Her eyes stayed locked on Marcus, her breathing steady. It was a small thing, but it immediately changed the mood. A beginner usually panicked at the very first jab, yet Danielle looked like she had done this countless. The air inside the clapping in the gym echoed long after the spar had ended. People stood along the edges of the mat, some still whispering, others shaking their heads in disbelief at what they had just seen. It wasn't every day that someone could walk into the gym, be underestimated, and then completely turn the atmosphere upside down. Yet Danielle had done it without saying a single unnecessary word. She had let her skill speak for her. Danielle walked calmly toward the bench where her bag was placed. She untied her gloves slowly, her movements unhurried, as if what had just happened was nothing unusual for her. She didn't act proud, she didn't celebrate, she didn't even look at the crowd. Her calmness only made the moment more powerful. Everyone else was buzzing with energy, but she remained centered, like a still lake after a storm. Marcus, still standing near the mat, pulled off his gloves with a heavy sigh. He wiped the sweat from his forehead and sat down on the edge, his chest rising and falling as he processed everything. His friends, who had cheered him on earlier, didn't know what to say now. A few gave him uneasy pats on the shoulder, but most kept their eyes on Danielle. It wasn't out of disrespect for Marcus but out of awe for her. After a moment, Marcus stood up again and walked toward Danielle. The room grew quiet, everyone watching to see how he would handle the situation. His pride had taken a hit, but he knew deep down that the right thing to do wasn't to hide it but to face it. He stopped in front of her, his voice lower than usual. "You're really good," he said. "Better than I expected. Way better." Danielle looked at him, her expression soft but still calm. She gave a small nod and said simply, "Thank you." That was all. No boast, no explanation, just gratitude. Marcus nodded back, this time more sincerely. He extended his hand, and after a short pause, Danielle shook it. That simple gesture carried more weight than any words could. It wasn't just a handshake, it was respect given and respect received. The instructor stepped forward, his voice breaking the silence. "That," he said, pointing toward Danielle, "is how a fighter carries themselves. Calm, controlled, respectful." His eyes then moved to Marcus. "And you," he added, "learned a valuable lesson today. Never underestimate someone, no matter how they look." The words hung in the air, heavy but true. The gym members nodded, some murmuring in agreement. Younger students, who had been watching with wide eyes, looked inspired. To them, Danielle had just shown that strength wasn't about who talked the loudest or looked the toughest, it was about discipline, control, and quiet confidence. After the spar, Danielle gathered her things, tied her shoes, and prepared to leave. But before she could, several people from the gym approached her. One of the women asked, "Where did you train before? You move like you've been doing this for years." Danielle gave a polite smile. "Here and there," she said softly, not going into details. She didn't seem interested in telling her life story. She wasn't there for recognition, she was there to train, to keep building her skills. Marcus sat quietly on the bench, listening. He felt a mixture of emotions. Part of him still stung from the way the crowd had reacted, but a larger part of him was humbled. For so long, he had been the one everyone looked at. He realized now that respect wasn't about always being the strongest in the room, it was about how you treated others, how you carried yourself, and how willing you were to learn even when you thought you had nothing left to learn. As Danielle walked out of the gym that day, the whispers followed her. Some people were already telling others about what had happened, retelling the moment she dodged Marcus's sweep, or when she slipped behind him with perfect timing, or when her calm eyes seemed to read every move he made. By the next week, her story had spread beyond that one sparring session. Newcomers heard about her, students talked about her in the locker rooms, and even trainers mentioned her as an example of discipline and humility. Danielle didn't change, though. She came back to the gym as usual, quiet and focused. She trained hard, followed instructions, and worked with partners respectfully. But now, whenever she stepped onto the mat, the room carried a different energy. People no longer looked at her as the quiet new woman, they looked at her as a fighter, someone to learn from, someone to respect. Marcus also changed. His attitude softened after that day. He still trained hard, still carried confidence, but he lost the edge of arrogance that had followed him before. When he sparred with others, he showed more care, more awareness. He became quicker to encourage younger students, quicker to acknowledge the effort of others. Many noticed the difference, and though no one said it directly, everyone knew it was because of Danielle. The moment became a lesson for the whole gym. It was a reminder that appearances could be deceiving, that talent and strength often came in unexpected forms, and that humility was as important as skill. For some, especially the young women who trained there, Danielle became a symbol. She showed them that they didn't have to shout to be heard, they didn't have to prove themselves with words. Skill, patience, and confidence could do that for them. Weeks later, Marcus approached Danielle again after class. This time, there was no crowd, no pressure. He sat next to her on the bench and asked, "Would you mind teaching me some of the things you know? You've got timing I can't figure out." Danielle looked at him with a faint smile and nodded. "Sure," she said. That was the beginning of a new respect between them, not as rivals but as training partners. From then on, people often saw them working together. Marcus, the loud confident black belt, and Danielle, the calm quiet fighter, sparring side by side, learning from each other. The gym no longer laughed at the idea of them sparring. Instead, they watched carefully, hoping to learn something themselves. The day Marcus first challenged her as a joke became a story people told again and again. But when they told it, they didn't laugh about it anymore. They spoke about how Danielle had silenced the gym with her skill, how she had earned everyone's respect without raising her voice, and how even the black belt himself had walked away humbled and inspired. It became more than just a sparring match, it became a reminder of respect, humility, and the quiet power of true strength. And Danielle? She never treated it as a victory to boast about. For her, it was just another day of training, another step in her journey. But for everyone else who had witnessed it, it was unforgettable. Gym felt heavier now. What had started as a playful joke was turning into something no one had expected. Marcus wiped his forehead with the back of his glove, even though the spar had only been going for a few minutes. It wasn't that he was tired, but he could feel the pressure. Every eye in the gym was on him. People who had come to practice their drills had stopped, trainers had paused mid-instruction, and even the young Marcus stood in the center of the mat, sweat sliding down his forehead as the gloves felt heavier on his hands. He was not out of shape, he trained every day, but this was a different kind of weight. It was the weight of pride, the pressure of all those eyes on him, and the sting of realizing that the opponent he thought would be easy was not only holding her own but outshining him. His chest rose and fell as he tried to steady his breathing. He glanced at the crowd, but the faces watching him offered no comfort. Their eyes were wide, their mouths half open, all of them waiting for what Danielle would do next. Danielle herself stood as calm as ever. Her stance had not broken since the spar began. Her gloves were still raised, her eyes steady, her breathing controlled. It was almost as if she had just walked onto the mat, not someone in the middle of sparring with a black belt. She had no tension in her body, no nervous shifting of weight, only patience. She wasn't chasing Marcus, she wasn't rushing for an opening, she was simply there, waiting for him to move, ready for whatever he threw at her. Marcus clenched his jaw. This was not a moment he could back down from. His reputation in the gym had been built for years, and in a few minutes, it felt like it was slipping away. He bounced lightly on his toes, then charged forward with renewed energy, deciding that if he couldn't outthink her, he could at least overwhelm her with speed and power. His gloves snapped through the air, his feet moved quickly, and his body pressed forward with every ounce of intensity he could muster. The crowd leaned forward, holding their breath. Danielle didn't flinch. Her eyes tracked him carefully, her feet shifting just enough to keep her balanced. As his punches came flying toward her, she blocked with precision, slipping her head at the right angles, letting some punches graze but never land fully. Then, in the middle of his storm, she stepped sideways, and with perfect timing, she landed a short clean jab straight to his cheek guard. The pop of the glove against his headgear rang out across the gym. The room erupted in gasps again. It wasn't that she had hurt him, the jab was controlled, light enough to be safe, but the message it carried was clear. She had read his attack, slipped into the right spot, and answered with precision. Marcus stumbled a step, then quickly caught himself, but the crowd had already seen it. They had seen the black belt get caught by the calm woman who no one had expected anything from. His friends, who had been grinning earlier, were silent now. The only sound in the gym was the echo of feet on mats and the sharp breaths of the two fighters. Even the younger students who usually whispered among themselves were frozen, their eyes locked on Danielle as if they were watching something unbelievable. Marcus tried again, refusing to accept the moment. He threw a low kick, sharp and fast, then followed with a hook. Danielle moved like she had been studying him all along. She lifted her leg slightly to absorb the kick, blocked the hook, and spun just enough to angle behind him. Before Marcus could turn, she tapped his shoulder with another quick strike. The crowd gasped even louder this time, and a few people clapped without holding back. It was too much for Marcus's pride. He turned back around, frustration written across his face. He wanted to say something, but the words never came. Instead, he steadied himself, lowering his gloves slightly. He realized he was at a crossroads, either keep pushing and risk being embarrassed further, or recognize what was happening and adjust. His breathing slowed, and for the first time that day, he bowed his head slightly, a subtle gesture of respect to his opponent. Danielle, calm as ever, gave a small nod in return. She didn't need words, she didn't need to smile or show off. That simple nod carried everything: confidence, humility, and strength. The instructor on the side noticed it too. He crossed his arms and gave a faint smile, proud to see such control and maturity from her. The spar wasn't over, though. Marcus lifted his gloves again, this time not with arrogance but with focus. He moved differently now, less showy, more disciplined. He stopped chasing her wildly and started watching her carefully. Danielle seemed to approve. She adjusted her stance slightly, ready for this new version of him. They exchanged strikes again, this time more balanced. Marcus threw sharper jabs, and Danielle blocked or dodged. She returned with clean punches of her own, light but precise. The gym watched in complete silence, amazed at the sight of two fighters locked in a rhythm that felt more like a real match than a joke. Marcus pushed forward once more, trying a high kick this time. Danielle ducked, sliding under the kick, and when she came up, she fired a quick 1-2 combination that stopped right in front of his chest. She didn't land it fully, pulling back just in time to show control, but the crowd still reacted with a loud cheer. The respect was undeniable now. For Marcus, the lesson was clear. He had underestimated her, thought of her as someone he could use to entertain the crowd. Instead, she had shown him and everyone else that skill and strength didn't always come in the package people expected. She had carried herself with dignity, fought with precision, and never once tried to humiliate him despite having the chance. The round came to an end as the instructor raised his hand. "That's enough," he said firmly, stepping forward. The gym clapped loudly, some even cheering, not for Marcus but for Danielle. She lowered her gloves, untied them slowly, and walked off the mat with the same quiet composure she had carried from the start. Marcus stood in the center for a moment longer, catching his breath, his chest heavy not from exhaustion but from realization. Then he too lowered his gloves and turned to her. With a deep breath, he gave a proper bow, this time full of respect. The crowd erupted once again, this time louder than before. Danielle didn't say anything. She simply bowed back lightly and walked toward her bag. She didn't need to explain herself, didn't need to answer the questions that were now buzzing in everyone's minds about where she had trained or how long she had been practicing. Her performance had already spoken louder than words ever could. For Marcus, the lesson lingered. Pride could be a heavy thing, but respect was far more powerful. He knew from that day forward he would carry a different kind of awareness into every spar, every match, every interaction in the gym. And for the crowd, they had witnessed something they would talk about for a long time: the day a quiet woman silenced the gym with nothing but her skill, her calm, and her unshakable strength. Younger students were watching silently. The energy had shifted from laughter to tension, and Marcus knew all of it rested on his shoulders. He was the black belt, the star fighter, the one everyone respected. Yet here he was, facing a calm woman no one had taken seriously before, and she was holding her own without even breaking a sweat. Danielle didn't move much. She stood grounded, her gloves steady, her eyes locked on Marcus. There was no sign of nerves in her expression. Her breathing was measured, her body language smooth, almost effortless. She looked like she belonged in the center of that mat. The calmness in her presence unsettled Marcus even more. He was used to opponents showing respect, fear, or at least nervous energy. Danielle gave him nothing to feed on, only silence and readiness. Marcus decided he had to take control again. He stepped forward quickly, throwing a sharp combination, testing her reactions. A jab, then a hook, then a low kick to break her balance. The crowd leaned forward, expecting Danielle to fold under the pressure. But again, she didn't. She blocked the jab with a quick flick of her glove, ducked under the hook, and shifted her weight so the kick only grazed her leg. Before Marcus could pull back, Danielle fired a fast jab straight into his guard, the pop of leather echoing across the gym. The sound made the crowd gasp, not because it hurt Marcus, but because it showed confidence. Beginners didn't jab back against black belts in the middle of combinations. Danielle wasn't just defending, she was answering, reminding everyone she was not intimidated. Marcus's jaw tightened. He circled her again, his movements sharper now. He was no longer smiling, no longer joking. He could feel his pride burning. This wasn't supposed to happen. This was supposed to be light-hearted fun, something to make everyone laugh and admire him more. But now he could sense that the audience's attention had shifted, not to him, but to her. Every time Danielle moved, the crowd noticed. Every time she blocked or countered, the silence grew heavier, as if the gym was collectively holding its breath. He stepped in again, this time faster, throwing a series of hooks. Danielle bent low, sliding under his arm and shifting behind him with smooth footwork. In one swift motion, she tapped his side with a clean strike, controlled but sharp enough to make him stumble forward slightly. A ripple of surprise spread across the gym. Marcus turned quickly, his eyes narrowing. He wasn't hurt, but his pride stung. He had just been outmaneuvered in front of everyone. Danielle, however, didn't change her expression. She didn't raise her chin, didn't smile. She simply returned to her stance, as if what she did was routine. By now, whispers had spread across the gym. She's trained before. She's not new. Where did she learn that? The questions hung in the air, but no one had answers. Danielle had never spoken about her past, never told anyone where she had trained. She came, she worked quietly, and she left. Most people assumed she was just another beginner trying out martial arts for fitness. Now they were seeing a completely different picture. Marcus tried to remind himself who he was. He was the black belt, the one who had earned years of respect in this gym. He could not let this slip. With a deep breath, he steadied his stance and launched another attack, heavier this time. He aimed a strong roundhouse kick toward her midsection, the kind that could shake even skilled fighters. Danielle didn't back away. Instead, she stepped in closer, catching the angle before the kick could extend, and with one fluid motion, she tapped his chest with a straight punch. The timing was flawless. The crowd erupted in gasps again, some even clapping without realizing it. Marcus stopped, his chest rising and falling. He realized she had completely read him. The strike wasn't hard, but it landed clean, undeniable. It meant she understood distance, timing, and pressure. These were not beginner's instincts, they were the instincts of someone deeply trained. The silence grew so heavy that Marcus could hear his own breathing. He glanced at the crowd, at the faces staring back at him, wide-eyed and shocked. He could feel his pride slipping further away. The laughter that had once filled the gym was gone. Now it was respect for her, not for him. Danielle stood still, waiting. She didn't taunt, didn't show off. That made it even harder for Marcus. If she had smirked, he could have used it as fuel to push harder. But her calmness left him with nothing but the truth: she was the better fighter in that moment. Marcus shook his arms, bouncing lightly on his toes again, trying to find a rhythm. He refused to back down. He attacked again, mixing punches and kicks with more intensity. Danielle's body moved like water, flowing smoothly between defense and counter. She blocked what mattered, dodged what she could, and answered with light but precise shots that reminded everyone she was in control. The instructor, who had been silent until now, nodded slightly, his eyes focused on Danielle. He recognized mastery when he saw it, even if it came from someone unexpected. His arms crossed as he watched Marcus struggle to keep up with her. At one point, Marcus tried a sudden sweep to catch her legs, a move that often caught opponents by surprise. Danielle jumped lightly, avoiding it, and landed gracefully, her eyes still fixed on him. The crowd couldn't hold back anymore. They erupted into cheers, clapping, and shouting in disbelief. It was the kind of reaction reserved for highlight moments in real fights, not light sparring sessions. Marcus stood frozen for a moment, hearing the applause. It wasn't for him. It was for her. He lowered his gloves slightly, his pride and ego twisting inside him. But at the same time, there was something else. He felt a small spark of respect. Danielle, breathing steadily, raised her gloves again, silently inviting him to continue. Her face stayed calm, almost gentle, but her stance carried strength. She didn't need to prove herself with words. Her movements had spoken louder than anything. The gym remained electric. People leaned forward, hungry for more. Some whispered that Marcus should stop before it got worse, others whispered that they had never seen anything like this before. Whatever they thought, one truth had already settled in the room: Danielle was no joke. She was the real thing, and she had silenced the gym without even raising her voice. Times before. Marcus chuckled softly, trying to keep his confidence. He circled her, tapping the mat with his feet, and threw another light punch toward her shoulder. Again, she blocked it easily, then shifted her stance ever so slightly, as if she was reading his movements. The whispers in the crowd grew louder. People leaned forward, realizing something unusual was happening. Danielle didn't rush, she didn't swing wildly. Instead, she waited. Her body moved with control, her feet steady. She was patient, like someone who understood timing. Marcus, on the other hand, was used to being the one in control, the one who surprised others. But now, he was the one who looked a little unsure. He tried to brush it off and threw a playful kick, aiming for her side but keeping it light. Danielle stepped back smoothly, her eyes never leaving him. Then, in a sudden shift, she countered with a quick jab to his chest, light, but precise enough to make him pause. The sound of her glove hitting his chest echoed across the mat. The crowd gasped softly. Marcus blinked. He hadn't expected her to throw a counter so quickly. Okay, he muttered under his breath, his grin fading slightly. He straightened up and decided to put just a little more effort in, enough to remind her and everyone else why he wore a black belt. He stepped in with a sharper combination, a left jab followed by a right cross, moves he used often to overwhelm beginners. But Danielle's gloves rose smoothly, blocking the jab, and before the cross could land, she shifted to the side, making him miss. The movement was clean, controlled, and almost too smooth for someone who was supposed to be new. Marcus's friends, who had been laughing earlier, grew quiet. One of them whispered, "She knows what she's doing." Danielle didn't speak a word. She moved with focus, her face calm and unreadable. She began to test Marcus now, throwing short, sharp jabs toward his guard, making him react. Each one landed close, controlled enough not to hurt but fast enough to show she had serious skill. The sound of gloves tapping against his forearm echoed again and again. It wasn't power that shocked the audience, it was precision. By now, the gym had grown completely silent. Every eye was fixed on the mat. Marcus started feeling the pressure. He had thought this would be a funny little spar, a way to entertain the crowd. But now he realized he was in a match where he could actually lose face. And losing face, for him, felt heavier than losing a round. He tried to reassert himself, using footwork to move quickly, throwing a few more kicks. But Danielle read his movements carefully. Each time he lifted his leg, she shifted her position to stay just out of range. Each time he lunged forward, she angled away, making him chase her. The crowd was seeing something they never expected, the black belt working harder than the supposed newcomer. Marcus finally decided to increase the pace. He rushed forward with a flurry of punches, faster and heavier this time, enough to overwhelm most opponents. Danielle didn't panic. She bent her knees slightly, covered up, and blocked the shots that mattered. Then, in one quick opening, she stepped inside his guard and tapped him on the shoulder with a clean uppercut. It was light, controlled, but clear. The gym gasped louder this time. For the first time in years, Marcus's face changed. He looked surprised, truly surprised. The playful grin was gone, replaced by a tight jaw and narrowed eyes. He realized that this wasn't just about showing off anymore. Danielle was a fighter, and she was proving it in front of everyone. He backed away, nodding slightly, as if acknowledging it. The respect in his eyes wasn't full yet, but it was starting to appear. Danielle didn't smirk, didn't celebrate. She just went back to her stance, gloves up, waiting patiently for the next exchange. The instructor on the side folded his arms and raised his eyebrows, clearly impressed. He had trained hundreds of fighters and could tell the difference between a beginner and someone experienced. Danielle wasn't just experienced, she was polished. The crowd grew tense. No one spoke now, no one laughed. They were all waiting to see what would happen next. The playful joke had turned into something bigger, something serious. Marcus bounced lightly on his toes again, trying to adjust. His pride was on the line now, and he wasn't going to let it slip without a fight. But Danielle stood there, calm and focused, as if she had been in situations like this many times before. She didn't need the crowd, she didn't need the approval. She only needed to prove one thing, that underestimating her was the biggest mistake Marcus could make. Standing up. His friends leaned closer, whispering and grinning. The gym started paying more attention now. People who had been busy with drills stopped to look over. The idea of a black belt sparring with a new woman at the gym was unusual enough that curiosity spread quickly. Danielle walked to the side, set down her bag, and started preparing. She pulled out a pair of gloves and calmly slipped them on. She moved with quiet confidence, not rushing, not fumbling, as if this wasn't the first time she had done it. Some of the more experienced fighters noticed her composure and exchanged curious looks. Beginners usually fumbled with gear or looked around nervously when asked to spar. Danielle seemed too calm for that. Marcus stepped onto the mat and stretched his arms, rolling his shoulders, playing to the crowd as usual. "Don't go too hard on me," he joked loudly, making people laugh again. The laughter this time was softer, mixed with a bit of curiosity about how this would actually go. Danielle finished tying her gloves, stood up, and walked onto the mat. She tied her hair back more securely, her expression still calm. As she raised her gloves into position, something subtle shifted. Her body language changed from quiet newcomer to focused fighter. Her stance was firm, balanced, her eyes locked on Marcus with a seriousness that surprised him. He tilted his head slightly, noticing it. "All right," he muttered under his breath. "She's really going for it." The instructor of the gym, who had been watching from the corner, stepped forward to oversee. It wasn't an official fight, just a spar, but even light sparring needed control and safety. The instructor looked at Marcus, then at Danielle, and gave a small nod. "Keep it clean. Respect each other," he reminded them. Both nodded. Around them, the gym grew quieter. The bags stopped swinging, conversations paused. Everyone wanted to see what would happen. Marcus still wore a grin, but it wasn't as wide as before. He bounced lightly on his feet, testing the ground. Danielle, on the other hand, stood completely still, waiting for the signal. She didn't fidget, didn't try to copy his movements. She just waited, focused. And in that stillness, there was something that caught people's attention even more than Marcus's showmanship. It was as if she knew exactly what she was doing. As the spar was about to begin, the energy in the gym shifted. What had started as a joke now carried a strange weight. The laughter that had filled the room earlier had died down. In its place was silence mixed with expectation. No one knew what was about to happen, but everyone could feel that it wasn't going to be as simple as Marcus thought. And Danielle, standing there with calm eyes and a steady stance, looked ready to prove it.